Hi guys, thanks so much for tuning in to the latest episode of the Renaissance Space podcast. This is the first episode in our new series which will have a focus on EdTech and how schools are using it well to support students and staff. In our first episode of the new series, we're going overseas to Abu Dhabi. I speak to Jack Morris, prep school librarian at Cranleigh School, Abu Dhabi, about how he has maintained strong levels of reading engagement throughout school closures due to the COVID-19 pandemic. As always, please comment, share and subscribe to the Renaissance Space podcast on whichever platform you're listening on. Also, you can get involved in the conversation around any Renaissance Space episode on Twitter. Just use the hashtag Renaissance Space. Enjoy the episode. Hello, Jack. How are you? Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah. So thanks very much for having me. I'm glad to be here. But yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
Good. It's wonderful to speak to you again, Jack. You and I spoke, it was February earlier this year, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It seems like a long time ago now, but yeah, February.
When I checked earlier today, I thought it must have been further away than February, but it wasn't that long ago. Time flies, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How's everything been? How's the school situation been since we last spoke, Jack?
Yeah, carried on as normal. Well, it's Ramadan now, so we've got slightly shorter days, shorter lessons. So we start a little bit later, finish a little bit earlier, but everything is just flying by. You get into school, you sat down, and then you're leaving again. So yeah, trying to fit a normal school day into a slightly shorter period, it's just a bit, it's interesting times.
Of course, yeah, absolutely. I'm sure that's shared with all of our attendees joining us today, and of course educators throughout the world. So Jack, talk to me about Cranleigh School. You're the prep school librarian, is that correct? Your role?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
talk
yeah,
about the school and your role specifically, please, Jack.
Yeah. So currently, we run from FS up until year 13. So we cover all from nursery all the way up to A level. But I'm the prep school librarian, so I cover from FS1, which is nursery, officially up until year 8, but I usually deal with up until year 6, because when they get to year 7 and 8, they try and sneak over into the senior library because it's a bit cooler for them up there. But I am the accelerated reader coordinator as well as being the prep school librarian. So we have accelerated reader, Renaissance products from year 3 to year 8. So I'm involved with the year 8, the 7 and 8 students, even though they don't specifically come to my library. Our libraries have not been open for a very long time, which is a real shame. So the kids haven't had physical books in their hands since the 24th of March. I think we went into lockdown, and then this academic year, both our libraries have been turned into classroom spaces because our bubbles need to be a certain size. So they have been commandeered by different classes and different departments for use. And because we've got quite strict rules at the moment about use of paper and quarantining and things like that, we haven't actually had our library in use yet, but we've still have managed to utilize Renaissance products.
Brilliant. So Jack, talk to us about accelerated reader. I believe it was already in the school before you joined. Is that correct?
Yes. Before I joined, they'd had a trial year of it, and had trialed it with a smaller number of students. They hadn't rolled it out across whole year groups or the number that we do have now. But because I was involved in the setup of it in my previous school, Cranleigh were really big to push it across whole year groups and the whole of the prep school. So we have it from years 3 to 8. Every student is enrolled. We start each term with a star reader assessment. So we do 3, maybe 4 a year, and then it is ingrained into their English lessons and their library lessons that when they finish reading a book, that's when they do their accelerated reader test. But we try and get their star reader assessment done within the first within the first few weeks of term, so that we've got the benchmark for the rest of the term and we can see their progression as the year goes on.
Good stuff. And of course, Jack, when you get accelerated reader, you also get star reading with that. And
Yes.
in your article you wrote for us earlier this year, which was published on the renaissance.co.uk website, you said the great thing about star reading is that when we have a new student with no previous data, we can test everyone at the beginning of the academic year, and we know roughly where they sit in the spectrum of ability. How useful is that to you to assess where you need to be starting with pupils' development?
Oh, it's incredibly useful because not every school uses accelerated reader. When a new student joins us, no matter where in the world they've come from, we are able to see where they are at, not only with their peers within Cranleigh, but within their peers across the schools that use like Star Reader. So we are able to, within that short 34 question Star Reader assessment, we get all of our data straight away of where they sit within their cohort, which is incredibly useful because it allows us to see where they are in relation to everyone else. And it's an incredibly useful tool that the student just thinks they're just answering 34 simple questions, but we get so much data from it, and you can see whether they need support in certain areas or whether they are working at above expectation. It's incredibly useful.
Good stuff. And of course, one of the main features of star reading is the various reports that you can run off, that you can report, and they illustrate the different types of data that you're accumulating from the star test every time a student carries out a star test. So in your article you provided earlier in the year, you referenced the growth report, which you said provides a concise summary of the year group, highlighting students by those working at or above benchmark and those in need of intervention. Again, is this a report that's user-friendly for you as a teacher? Does this make sense to you? Is it a report you can refer to even and you know what the information is saying?
Oh, we love the growth report. Everyone loves the growth report. Once you show the staff where it is, that is the one that they're like, right, just we need that one so that we can see progression. Whenever I get contacted by SLT or senior leadership, that is the most important one that they would like to check. It's clear, it's concise. We can do it down to individual students, or you can do it down to classes, or you can do it for year groups, and it just shows that the product works, and it shows the progression that we would like to see. It's always great to know that students are improving in their reading skills and their comprehension and their understanding, but when you can have that tangible data in front of you and you can look at it and say, here is what we are saying, and you can see the progression, it makes it so much more worthwhile and accessible for people. It's all well and good us going, it works, but when you put that chart in front of someone and says, now you can see it works, it's incredibly good.
Good. That's good. That's good to hear. And that's the benefit of the report from Star Reading for teachers. You know, clearly it's doing a good job for teachers there. It's a beneficial resource. What about students, Jack? How they approach Star Reading assessment? Has there been anxiety around it, or is it something that's become part of their normal curriculum in a normal academic year?
I think when we introduced it across, when we like officially rolled it out and said, right, this is going to be happening now, from now on, you're going to do one of these at the beginning of every term. I think, as always, when you tell a student there's going to be a test, they're like, oh my goodness. But I think, like, we've had it now for 2.5 years, and it's become part of at the beginning of term, especially the slightly older students, they know that it's coming and they're like, right, let's try and see. They really want to know what their result is. And you can see them when we pass out their EPD level after their initial STAR assessment. You can hear them all chattering, going, oh, what have you got? And we don't want them to focus too much on what their peers have, but it's nice that they're interested in what their own level is and where they are at with their friends in their classes. But it takes a slightly more for the year 3 students to get their head around, because they're always fresh to it from year 2. So you kind of have to go, right, this is what's going to happen. But they're so tech savvy now, you just say, look, this is what you need to do. Take your time, just don't rush it. That's the biggest thing, I think, that they go, right, oh, I've done it in like 5 minutes. And we say, no, we're not going to get the results that we need or the answers that you want if you rush through it too quickly. So we sometimes have to get them to sit down and retake it. But the students, it's become part of the beginning of term activities now. They know that they'll be in their English lesson or in their library lesson, and they will come and they will do their star reader assessment, and that's it. And then they know at the beginning of every term, all being well, if they've put the effort in and we've encouraged them enough, that their levels will go up. And it's in the second and the third term that you really start seeing them go, oh, right, now I can see that my levels have gone up.
Absolutely, and that's what it's there for. It's an illustration of a student's growth. A group of students, you can group them by level of ability, you can group them by year group, or you can look at an individual student's growth and you can see, right, are they progressing as they should be? Where can we offer intervention? And as we know, the STAR assessment questions are computer adaptive. So if a child is getting the questions right, then they get harder, they get more challenging. And if the child is getting questions wrong, then they get easier. So by the end of the 20-minute test, and like you said, it should be a 20-minute test to give you this accurate information. You get a really good snapshot of the child's current level of growth and where they sit on the spectrum of ability. For you, Jack, for someone who refers to all the reports, receives all the data from STAR assessments, are you confident that that data is accurate, that the information you're reading is reliable?
Yes, I would say it is. And because you're able to then, you can look at the data and you can look at the student in the class, and the two match up really well together. And recently we did our second round of star reader assessments, and I was quickly going through all the data just to see if I could see any anomalies. And there was one that was not in line with the student's ability in the class. And after emailing their class teacher, she said, yes, this was a red flag that I saw myself as well. And it's great that it's just another level of, it's not like protection, but it's another benchmark which you can look. And it's all well and good being able to see them in the class, but when you've got that data to back up your assumptions as well, it becomes really useful.
Good. That's what we want it to be for. It's to provide information, to provide context to staff around where specifically the child is struggling with regards to vocabulary acquisition, SPAG, whatever it might be, the niche area of their growth that needs to be supported. So Jack, talk to me about parents, because you mentioned in your article, you spoke briefly about what's great about some of the STAR assessment reports, and of course the report for accelerated reading, that you can use that information to share with parents to help them be more engaged with their child's reading progression from home.
Yes, a lot of our parents are, especially since remote learning started, they've been able to be a lot more involved with their child's learning, and they want to know more about what goes on almost behind the scenes. So we're able to show them areas in which they can help support their child. Because of the amount of data that we get from Star Reader and Accelerated Reader, we can point the parents in the right direction and say, yes, your child is reading a book, but you could help them with their comprehension. So once they finish reading a chapter, maybe sit down with them and discuss what they've read and try and tease a bit more out of them to really reinforce that acquisition of knowledge. So they're not just racing through a book, they're really paying attention to what they're reading and how they're reading and the skills that they're progressing with.
Good. Okay, so with all that in mind, we've touched on Accelerated Reader, we've touched on Star Reading and the assessment and the data information it provides staff and students. But talk to us about myON. This is something the school board, arguably, it was the resource you needed to cover a remote learning situation for students who were going to be having to read from home and might not have had the proper access to reading materials at home that they, we would all have children, to ensure they have plenty of books, that as much as they would have in their library. That's not always the case. What does myON offer you, Jack?
It's offered us the chance for the students to have a library without having the physical library. It's allowed them access to books, even though I can't sit behind my desk and say, right, here you go, here's your actual book. It's great that they are able to still carry on reading. And sometimes in the Middle East, it's more difficult to get hold of books as quickly as we would like, or just as many as we would like. So they're there at the push of a button, and it links straight in with their Star Reader and their accelerated reader. So once they finish their book, the quiz is right there. It's not like other platforms where you have to leave and then go into another one and there's not always a quiz available for it. Everything ties in together. So all three come together. Like myON is just like the last part, which ties it all together and allows them not only to progress with their Star Reading and their accelerated reader levels, but also to have that access to the books that they haven't got at the moment.
Good, and that's exactly what the product should do. They are intertwined. You can read a book on myON from home, carry out an accelerated reader quiz on that book, whether from home or next time you're back in the classroom. And then, at the end of the term you're in, or the beginning of the next term, you can carry out a STAR assessment to see how much growth the child has made in that time, thanks to the formative assessments of myON and accelerated reader in between.
The doors open and it's another world. myON is more than a library platform. It gives students all the choices and you all the tools. With a growing collection of thousands of enhanced books, accessible in school and at home. Each student has their own profile, allowing myON to offer them personalised recommendations according to their individual interests and reading levels. And there's no rationing of how many people can be reading the same book at the same time.
So, myON as a product is often seen as purely a remote learning product, purely something that can be used during strange times of school closures that we've seen over the last year. But actually, as a classroom-based resource, in line with accelerated reading and Star Reading, how can you see myON and the whole complete solution of it, accelerated reading and Star Reading, being used further on?
Because it allows you to make like collections and assign books to students. So whilst in a perfect world, it'd be amazing to be able to say, what books do you need? Here's as many as we need of them, and go, here you go, you can have a book, you can have a book, you can have a book. With myON, it's great that you can go, here are the books. And you go, let's say we're researching the rainforest, and the teacher can then get a rainforest collection together, and all of the students at the same time can have a look at that book without them all having to go, oh, we've only got 3 copies of this, so you 3 can read it at the same time, and then the rest of the class will have to look at another book. They are all able to utilize the same text at the same time, and like the extra functions of allowing the help with pronunciation of words and like the dictionary section and things like that. The students then don't have to worry about, I don't understand what this word means. It gives them a sense of ownership of their own learning. And some students, because we don't always have first language speakers in school, we have so many different nationalities, and they can get quite embarrassed at times if they don't feel that their English is as good as their classmates. So instead of them having to put their hand up and not embarrass themselves, but take themselves out of their comfort zone, they're able to use myON to just check what a word means or check the pronunciation. So they're able to increase their own self-confidence, not only in their reading, but in their just overall academic journey.
Wonderful. And that was going to be my next question, Jack. You referenced in your article back in February, specifically for English second language students or English additional language students, One of the great features of Accelerated Reader with physical books in the actual library is after they take a quiz, it will recommend a ZBD range of books which are tailored to their specific level of ability. So when they go into the library, they know what ZBD range of books to be looking for. And if they pick one of them, that should be comfortable. It should be a comfortable read on for them based on the difficulty of vocabulary in the book, based on the length of the book, etc. Same as myON, they have a ZBD range on their digital library too. So how does this ZBD score from Accelerated Reader, the ZBD labels you might put on your books in the library, how does that give ESL second language students more confidence, have you seen?
It just means that they're able to read something that is suitable for them. I know within children, there's always that element of, oh, they're reading this book, so I want to read this book, but their reading level might not be at that stage just yet. And we're not in the business of saying, no, you can't read that. But we want students to feel, as the school librarian, as long as a child is reading, that like I'm happy, but I want them to be happy with what they're reading. And if they don't feel comfortable or they feel intimidated by a book because they're not quite ready for that book yet, then I could lose a reader. And that's the last thing that I want. But by having the color bands on the outside of the books and having the labels on the inside of the cover to show exactly what level it is, students are able to make that informed, conscious choice themselves of knowing which book is exactly right for them.
For you, it's a whole class teaching tool, a main check-in point for learning, and an integrated homework hub. You can deliver notes and activities per class or per student, and easily review individual and group progress. The myON project community allows lesson ideas and resource collections to be shared across the platform, between colleagues and between schools. And myON provides you with meaningful insights of your class's reading habits, which can be further enhanced with accelerated reader integration.
Have you seen students back in the library since we last spoke?
No, it's a question I get asked every day of when will the library be open by students, no matter where I am in school. They're like, Mr. Morris, when's the library going to be open? And I just have to say, I'm really sorry, I don't know, because when they said that the school was opening back up again, we were all like, great, that's amazing. And then I was taken off to one side and said that there's going to be no library. So yeah, we don't know what's happening, which is a real shame. I would love to see the library open again. I would love to see students back in the library, because when before all of this happened, I was there from 7 o'clock in the morning till 4:30 of an evening, and there was always students in there. You had to like ferry them out the door, be like, look, you've got to go. You go to your lessons. But who knows what's going to happen moving forward.
So how are you primarily monitoring students' reading engagement? Yeah, with no library time.
So it's a big push with the form tutors and with the English department. Once a morning, they do have like a silent reading or a private reading during their tutor time. Yeah. So that's always nice to come in. So they either read. We try and reduce the amount of screen time, but also if they're reading, then we try and encourage it. If they don't bring their book in, we go, look, there's myON, read a book, but please try and bring a physical book in with you. So it's some students, as always, are like, oh, I've always forgotten my book, but it's trying to push that enthusiasm that we still had when everything was running normally. In these very, very strange times. So the older students have a private reading lesson once a week when some of the other students go to their native Islamic or Arabic studies. So they have a reading lesson then, which I supervise for some classes. So that's always trying to encourage them. Once you finish your book, don't forget to do your accelerated reader assessment. So it's because the library isn't open. It's the students seem to have almost lost a little bit of their enthusiasm for reading. So with them not having that actual physical central place, we're having to put a lot more effort in to try and carry on with their engagement. But it's myself, it's the form tutors, it's the English department. We're trying everything we can to get them excited about reading still.
Good, that's the main thing. That's what's most important.
Students develop their reading independence with tools like the built-in dictionary, audio support, and journal, allowing them to immerse themselves in the books. And you gain more than just a library platform. You create the paths, they open the doors. myON, a whole world of reading.
So Jack, on a final note, your kind of final summary in your article that you wrote for us back in February, to conclude, accelerated reader, star reading, and myON, the whole complete literacy solution, it's the best fundamental feature. It's great for tracking student progress. So Jack, going forward, how are you going to continue working with staff, working with students to track student progress using those products, and is it going to be still as important as it has been over the last year?
Oh yeah, definitely it is going to be as important. We only had an email the other day asking when our next round of star reader assessments is going to be. So that wasn't even a member of the English department. It was another teacher going, hey, are we still doing this? Because the students, I think, were asking her, when are we going to find out our next set of levels? So it is ingrained within our curriculum now, and I don't see it going anywhere. It's the data that we get from it is so incredibly useful that if I can keep it in the school, then I will be. It's great to be able to say to people, here are the results that you would like to see. Here are the areas where we need to focus our main areas of concern. And this is what we can do to help those students that need the support. And I can print off, reams of paper. I can show you different graphs. I can give you spreadsheets. I can give you bullet points, and it will give you all of the information that you need of where we can improve, where we don't need to improve, where we need to carry on how we're doing. So it's an incredibly useful tool, and I love it. The students love it. When it's used correctly, it does so much. And if you're on the webinar because you're undecided about whether or not to get any of the products, I would say yes, please do.
Amazing. Jack, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure to speak to you. And it was a pleasure to speak to you back in February when we put the article together, and even more so now. It's good to hear that your staff, your dedication and your commitment to your students is absolutely reflected in across the whole of Cranleigh School, and I'm sure it's the same for your colleagues.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the International School Librarian episode of the Renaissance Space podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. As always, if you'd like to comment or share your views on the episode, get involved with the conversation on Twitter and use the hashtag Renaissance Space. To listen to all previous episodes of the Renaissance Space podcast, subscribe to the podcast on whichever platform you're listening on. If you're enjoying the Renaissance Space podcast, please share it with friends and colleagues. And to find out when the next episode will be available, or for exclusive insights into each episode, follow either myself or Margaret on Twitter. Both our handles are in the episode summary. Thanks for listening.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Renaissance Space podcast, please check out the Education Joining the Dots podcast from our colleagues at GL Assessment. Thank you.